What's up, bros? This is Viet Duan, and you are listening to the BBYK podcast, part of the BSPN radio network. It is that time of year, and we will be doing our BBYK Christmas countdown. That is 25 days of non-stop original content just for you guys. Look, it's okay. We get how you're feeling. And you know what? It's completely natural. It is a very special time of year. Magical, one might say. You got chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, and all of a sudden, out of the darkness, a magnanimous podcast delights your ears, breaking down the poetry of violence. It is understandable that you might begin to develop some feelings. Look, this might just be a little crush. Some might call it a winter fling. All we're saying is embrace it, because life is short, so live it boldly. And for those that might feel afraid of change, of making this big leap of faith, for those that are a little uncomfortable with feelings, well, our advice to you is...
Don't be afraid to catch feels. Ride your cup and chase thrills. I know you ain't afraid to pop pills. Baby, I know you ain't scared to catch feels. Feels with me.
We got a great episode for you guys today. We're going to cover a couple things around the MMA landscape, and then the main event. We're going to be talking about UFC 218, a card that we feel maybe a little slept on, doesn't get a lot of push. We're going to get into why we think that's the case. It's like a card that seems like the UFC. It's like, these are the guys that we want to market to you, and here are guys we don't want to market to you anymore, and we're going to have these other guys beat them up. This is like clearly, we want Waterson to win, we want Gaethje to win, we want Ngannou to win, we want Holloway to win. Like, it's so obvious. They're like, and they're not even really promoting the other guys at all. They're like, oh, come watch Holloway fight. There may be a former champ there that's fighting.
He's not going to throw any leg kicks, and he's not going to look as good because USADA.
Let's just have a rolling start. I'm joined by my two good friends and fellow professional fight analyst, or amateur fight analyst. Like.
I wish I was professional.
Shit.
We got the return.
Keep those clicks up, guys.
We got the return of Matt Two Stripe Alexander. Good to have you back, Matt.
Annyeong.
And then we also have David BC Bridges. What's up, Dave?
What's happening, y'all?
All right, guys. A lot has happened since the last time we did one of these podcasts. I think the one we last did was for the big return for GSP, and the fallout from that was amazing. 3 titles changed hands, so incredible. We've had a couple cards since then. The guy that fought in the main event in that fight, Michael Bisping, has just fought again recently, last weekend, at UFC Shanghai. And then he got smoked a second time by a former welterweight. Not a great way to go out for Bisping. I like, props for him for stepping up, for taking that fight, but sheesh, that just seemed like George St. Pierre. If you look at some of his fights towards the end of his career, all right, he tries to control, doesn't seem to do too many things that like potentially would just like can pose like a lot of imminent threat at different points. It's more like he's going to try to win you over on points. Not that he can't do that, which, I mean, he obviously did capitalize on a hook. But Gastelum, to me, just seems like a much more dangerous opponent at 185. And Bisping had to learn that the hard way. So we'll see. Last we saw of Bisping, or do you think he's serious when he says he wants to make that return fight in London?
He's going to make a return fight.
Yeah. David?
I would have to agree with Matt. I have a hard time seeing that as the last time Michael Bisping enters the octagon.
Yeah, I would like to see him. I would love to see him go off on a W. So, if we could play Dream Matchmaker real quick, who would be interesting there? Because I'm thinking like something like kind of like your more legacy fight, but he already beat Anderson Silva. That could be like a fun one. Vitor run that one back, cool. Like a post USADA.
Post TRT, he would fucking wreck him.
Yeah, I'm sure Bisping would love that. And, you know, enough of a name, if it's just like a Fox card or something, that could be a headliner. I mean, especially in London, they'll shell out to go for Bisping. That could
honestly, it's a matchup I think that would draw in a lot of casual fans if it was on Fox or something like that. Bisping versus Vitor, even though has no real implications on the division now. That's something that people go, oh wait, I know these names. I'll watch this.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. One of the stars of the sport has gone a little loco essay talking about one Conor McGregor. It's just like it's like that stuff where like you see it and you're like, really? Oh shit, really?
Yeah. At first I looked up and I was like, this is dumb. This is not real. Whatever. And then it keeps going. I'm like, oh shit, maybe it is.
Yeah. David, what is going on here, man? What is going on with this guy? Why don't you recap real quick, sort of some of the stuff that he's been going through, the Bellator thing, the mob hit. I mean, what's up here? Oh my gosh!
So Conor's been living a different life since he fought Floyd Mayweather. Like you said, there was that Bellator incident where he jumped into a cage after a buddy of his won a fight, jumps in there and ends up like shoving a ref and throwing punches at I think a commissioner or something like that. Did not really get into too much trouble for that, but there was a lot of obvious, public backlash when that happened. And then turns around and I guess last weekend or something, ends up getting into a bar fight in Ireland in his hometown. And
which he won.
Oh, well, I sure hope. It turns out he hit. I believe it was I've heard different stories. One was the brother of some drug dealer. The other one was the father of a drug dealer. But anyway, long story short, it turns out that whoever he hit was related to some guy who was some fairly bad news and involved in some Irish mafia, essentially. And now the word is that there is a hit out or something of that nature on Conor McGregor, or at least a ransom or something like that.
It's just do fucking nothing. Left hand shots all around.
It's insane. It's really insane. Like this is the guy that's the biggest star in the sport, arguably the biggest star in combat sports, and now he's kind of slowly pulling a John Jones and can't get out of his own way. I think it was yesterday Dana White had a media scrum, and he said that he would not be surprised if Conor never fights again. He's like, why would he? He has $100 million, and he's clearly doing other things now. I was like, those other things aren't pretty good for his health.
By the way, just to jump on that real quick, we'll keep on talking about Conor, but part of that media scrum, Dana White said something else about Tony Ferguson kind of needing to like, hey man, like you're not the guy that's in charge, like shut up, do your job kind of thing. I get that, but also like what? Like isn't like part of sport like promoting, like making fights, and you like it when fighters like self-promote? And I don't know anybody that is more qualified to call out the current champion than the current interim champion. Isn't that's like what's supposed to happen? What's crazy is when Kobe Covington comes in and starts demanding title shots. But the interim champion, Ferguson, who's been fighting anyone that the UFC has thrown against him, top level competition for like the last
on a double-digit win streak.
I feel like that guy should be allowed to call out Conor McGregor, and it's not like he's saying something like egregious. He says defend or vacate, like fight for the belt of the division that you are the champion of, or vacate the belt. That seems like very normal to me. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Is that just like Dana White just kind of being an asshole?
I don't trust Dana White. Dana White skips leg day. Yeah, I said it.
Oh man, yeah. I feel like it makes too much sense to have a unified belt in the lightweight division. That's so 2012 UFC. Like, come on, guys, we're in 2017 now. We're supposed to have like 17 belts per division at this point. I mean, come on.
You're just waiting for the interim champion of the interim champion.
Exactly.
It's kind of nuts. It's kind of nuts. It's a fight that I'm very interested in seeing. I think it would be a very good fight. Going back to this Conor stuff, though. I mean, actually, Matt, we haven't even really let you say anything about it. I don't know if you have anything to add to it, but it's just like his behavior. This is a guy who seems to be really good at controlling when and where to be, the notorious, and when to be a professional and be Conor. I mean, this is a guy, I remember Cowboy Cerrone had an anecdote where it was like, behind stage, it was kind of like, hey, what's up, Connor? Hey, Donald, how are you doing? Cool. Shake hands, whatever. Get on the stage. Oh, this fucking guy I would beat you. You're stiff or whatever. And it's just kind of like, I think one of my favorite gifs was like him and his girlfriend. I don't know his girlfriend's name. I feel bad because I think I've heard it like a ton of times, but if one of you guys know it off the top of your head. But I'll just refer to her as Connor's his baby mama.
Baby mama.
My favorite gif was like they were sitting there watching a fight, and then the thing pans over to her, and she turns and she starts smiling, and like, because that's like her boyfriend usually is like this happy, like smiling guy, and then like she looks over and Connor's like mean mugging, like, and she's like, oh, he's doing his little bit, and she laughs like because like it's obvious, like you could tell she starts laughing at him, and you could just tell like that's not how he usually behaves. It's like, oh no, honey, the camera's on, you know. And then I don't know, like maybe you make $100 million, you kind of start believing that's who you are, who you really are. These guys are obviously not like the biggest. It's not like big time like mafia, or you know. He didn't pick on like the biggest guys, I guess, because I think they're asking for $900K. I think for Connor, he's like, what? That's it? Like, he could fit. It's like one of like Floyd's backpacks. It's like that's all you guys wanted. So I'm wondering if like these guys have like this big like, you know, kind of gang West Side Story, like Connor's crew versus like this Irish mafia. It's gonna look a lot like when they went up against the Diaz Bros, and like they're gonna start throwing water bottles at each other, like cans of Monster. Instead of cans of Monster, it would be like cans of Guinness. So I don't know. Very confusing stuff. I do think
it's bad for Connor's crew. The man they have Artem. You know, that's tough.
Artem.
Oh my god, you're talking about West Side Story. That makes me. I'm just like Artem sitting in front of a mirror. I feel pretty. I feel witty. Then he hammer fists it, standing.
All right. So we're gonna get into this UFC 218 card, and David, as you astutely pointed out, a stacked card. Lots of very, very good, exciting fights, but nothing that really. I mean, they're trying to sell this Alvarez Gaethje fight as like, oh, must, like, you know, can't miss TV, which I do believe this is can't miss TV. Definitely a contender, potentially. Sometimes we hype it up in our heads and it ends up being a dud, but potential fight of the year candidate, just like on paper and these two styles, but not really any names on here that like I think the casual fans would go, oh man, I have to get this pay-per-view. You don't make plans, right? I don't feel like most people would make plans around watching this fight. It's more like, oh, if you happen to be free Saturday night. I don't know how many people are gonna like. I don't know how this is going to do pay-per-view numbers, especially considering the card, the last pay-per-view card, UFC 217, which is such a monster card, and so many big storylines, big names on that card. It almost kind of feels like a letdown a little bit, and I think that it's being marketed like it's a bit of a letdown. Not a lot of hype, not a lot of anything. And then so I kind of talked with you guys about this earlier. I'll pose the question to you again, and I'll throw this one to Matt. But does this not kind of feel like a card where it's like the UFC's like, here are the guys that we want to market in 2018, and here are the guys we don't really want to market anymore, and we're going to have them fight on the main card, because you got Watterson and Ngannou, along with Paige Van Zandt, Sage Northcutt. I think they were like the Reebok models, right? They were the ones that like got to show off the new gear. So It's kind of weird to me, because Francis hasn't really fought since the beginning of this year. So he's almost had like a year off since he's fought. Like somehow his popularity has grown. Like, and I mean, we haven't really seen, we haven't seen him in action, but I think in the minds of fans, this guy is all of a sudden like a beast, which yes, he is, but he hasn't put in I don't know if he's put in the requisite like work for us to kind of consider him as highly as some fans do. Please feel free to disagree with me on that. But this is a guy his biggest victory to date was his last fight against Arlovsky. An impressive finish, but it's kind of like we're just expecting this guy to start wrecking through people. I don't know if you guys saw, but he did like some kind of sports science thing, and he's like the hardest puncher in the UFC. It's like so, and he has a lot of hype behind him. Very surprising they kind of used him as one of the cover guys on the UFC. So it looks like the UFC is really promoting this guy. Gaethje, another guy that it seems like the UFC is promoting fairly heavily. And Alvarez kind of treated as like the old guard, you know? And you know, with his last few fights, it kind of seems like he's on more of a downward trend. It seems like UFC 218 out with the old, in with the new, not to mention the main event. Holloway, Aldo, the like very definition of out with the old, in with the new. Except it's already happened. But we just have to watch. We should have to watch it again. So, I mean, Matt, what do you think? Does it seem like that's what's happening here with this card?
It is out with the old, in with the new, and Aldo is old.
I think Tisha Torres is actually younger than Michelle Watterson, but I'll have to fact check that. I don't know. David's our fact check guy. Is that true, David?
Just say yes.
I believe so. I'm double checking right now.
Okay, let's see. I'm looking. She's 28, and Watterson is 31. So yeah. So maybe that doesn't quite work there. And I think actually Pettis might be younger than Cejudo too, though. I think we talked earlier, and that's not. They can market Pettis. I don't think there's no real loser in the Pettis Cejudo in terms of the UFC, like their perspective. I think you can market either guy. I think Cejudo seems to have legitimate, like, elite tools that you could conceivably say after this fight, yeah, if Mighty Mouse doesn't want to make that super fight with TJ Dillashaw, Cejudo with a win here seems to be the next guy, unless you want to see Mighty Mouse Benavidez 7 or whatever.
and who doesn't, honestly?
Right. So we're gonna
I love watching what's his face get the shit kicked out of him. Benavidez, Jiu-Jitsu Joe.
All right. We were looking at we're just gonna kind of do some quick highlights, quick hitters for UFC Fight Pass. David, you said for your money, if you're gonna be watching some fights on Fight Pass, do not miss this Razak Al-Hassan fight. Now, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about this guy if they don't? He's not the biggest name.
Exactly correct. So he's not the biggest name. I mean, he's fighting on the Fight Pass prelims of what you said. You know, it's not exactly a huge card necessarily. He did lose his last fight by a split decision, and I mean, he's also fought a bunch of very not low level but kind of no name guys. But the guy's career is just full of first round KO after first round KO after first round KO. I mean, he basically goes out there and throws bombs on everybody. And this fight this Saturday against Sabah Hamasi is stylistically kind of one to show off his own skills. So this is one that will probably not last very long, but it's going to be vicious and violent and awesome. And this is someone that, you know, he has the stand up, he has the power, he has the speed. But if he can, you know, build out his game more, he could be real dangerous going forward in his career. I mean, he's young and he's got the athletic tools there already. It's just a matter of filling everything out. But this one will be a fun one. This is, you know, just one of those fun fights.
I also want to point out, David, I mean, you have just come such a long way. Like, since we've started doing this podcast, your ability to pronounce these names. I mean, I remember back in the day with the Cain Velasquez, and now all of a sudden, like, Homasi and Razak Al-Hassan, and you're like I mean, it's like you started listening to, like, NPR or something like that. You're just, I just want to give you props, man. It's just, like, really good.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And then later on the main card, Eddie Alvarez versus Justin Gadeje. And then we also have to give a shout out to Amanda Bobby Cooper, who's going against probably the most hated female fighter that's surprisingly still in the UFC. I know this is a big fight for her. She wanted to fight in her hometown. I mean, her hometown is Bath, Michigan, but whatever. Detroit. Hometown. So this was important for her to get on the card. It's cool. I know it's a big fight for her. She hasn't had she was a big prospect coming in the UFC. Hasn't had the success that she's wanted, obviously, and Magana may not be like the biggest name for fight fans, but just kind of like your casual fans. They know who she is, so it's it's a decent win for Cooper if she pulls it off, which I think she will. Great boxing, has improved on her grappling, just her overall game. All right, let's move on to this FS1 prelims card. Matt, I'm going to throw it to you. What fight here stands out to you?
Oh wait, in the prelims?
Yeah.
Obviously Felice Herrig, because last time she fought, somebody was chanting "Build that wall." At least I think that was her back in UFC Houston. Also, Yancy Medeiros is pretty cool, so I think that one will be fun.
Yeah, that's actually, we didn't even really talk about that when we were talking about this pre-show, but that's an interesting fight. What's your call there, Matt? Medeiros and Cowboy Oliveira. The fake cowboy.
The fake cowboy, yeah.
Not my cowboy.
Not my cowboy. I think Medeiros can win as long as he doesn't gas out. He's a hard hitter, and it's very straightforward, but they are fun to watch.
One thing I'll point out to Herrig, and I do like her style, and as a fighter, I really respect like what she's done. Kind of, if you want to talk about like old guard and new guard, she was part of like that original class of female mixed martial artists that finally started getting some promo. I understand what she was saying about like the UFC. They only want to promote like the young pretty girls that like show their booty on Instagram or whatever. But part of it's kind of like, weren't you like the person that used to wear like leopard print bikinis to your like weigh-ins? I mean, when you were younger, you did the same stuff. That's just kind of, I guess, what what you do. Now everyone has to walk out in the Reebok kit, and nobody finds Reebok kit sexy. So the fight I'm looking forward to most on this prelims, probably this Charles Oliveira versus Paul Felder fight. I think that's a very, very interesting stylistic matchup. Oliveira is one of the guys for a while now I kind of thought was, he's just like right there. One of those guys that just seems like right below elite level, but can just smash through just about everyone else. And I think Paul Felder is another guy that might just kind of be at that level. David, do you have a pick here?
I kind of agree with you in the fact that they're both kind of in that same spot. A win here could really propel either fighter. Like you said, it's a hard fight to pick. I might lean Oliveira. I think that Felder sometimes leaves himself a little too open when he charges in. But man, Felder can hurt you though. It's tough. But I think I would lean Charles Oliveira on this one, just because of Felder's kind of like defensive lapses sometimes.
Oliveira, I think maybe at this point a little bit more well-rounded. He mixes in takedowns, so you have to think about that. He's got a submission game, so once you get on the ground, you have to think about that. I just see Felder here with the edge in his boxing, and he's probably going to have the power edge, so I'm probably leaning Felder here. Felder, have you seen him on Fox Sports? He's so polite, and like everyone like they kept like at least it felt like to me they would just like be like, who the F are you? We don't care. They just kept facing him. What was it? Oh yeah, he was talking to Mighty Mouse after Mighty Mouse just won, and like he was like, obviously right now, in my opinion, you're pound for pound the best fighter on the planet. Like, what's next for you, man? Like, what are we gonna do here? And Mighty Mouse is like, who are you? Like, why do you always want to ask me what's next? I just won the belt again. I just made history. Why don't you let that sink in? Paul Felder's like, fair enough. I'm like, poor guy. Poor guy.
Poor Paul Felder.
The Irish Dragon. I did not know that was his nickname.
Wait, for real? That's the nickname?
Yeah.
Paul Felder's nickname.
That's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. He's got those shin tattoos, man. That's gotta hurt.
Oh.
All right.
He's badass when you do that.
You're absolutely right, David, in that like this is a big fight for both fighters and could potentially propel them into the rankings. That's just a really stacked division. So So we're just gonna get into this main card real quick. This first fight, interesting fight. We were talking about this a little bit earlier too, and I'm a little bit confused as to why. It seems like a lot of the talk, people are expecting Waterson to win this fight. Like, she's the favorite. I know the UFC's been really pushing her. They've been promoting her, and I don't know. I think this is a really tough fight for Waterson. I think Tecia Torres is tough. Matt, I'm gonna let you have first crack at this. What are your thoughts on this fight?
I concur. I actually am leaning Tecia Torres. She's quicker and more experienced, and might be getting overlooked a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think she's just a little bit better. I have her by decision, really.
Okay, I dig it, Dave.
I agree with Matt. I do think this is Tecia Torres' fight here. Their styles are somewhat similar in the fact that they both throw a lot of kicks. They're both good strikers. Tecia Torres, I think, is the stronger of the two, and she also throws a lot more. She throws more and with more power. Waterson tends to, pot shot a bit more than Tecia Torres does. Torres more kind of, I wouldn't say bull rushes you, but just throws much more consistently and with much more power. I think Waterson's best shot here is to somehow get this to the mat where she can, use her submission skills, which she has shown off repeatedly. Michelle Waterson, even though her nickname is the Karate Hottie, she's really shown some great skill when it comes to capitalizing on submission openings. So I think that's her best shot here. But if it stays on the feet, I have a hard time seeing Waterson being able to deal with Torres up there. Like I said, she throws more and throws harder. So I think this is Torres' fight. If Waterson tries to close the distance to drag the fight to the mat, I think she eats one too many.
I actually think that you guys are ahead of the curve on that one. I just think right now the big push is Michelle Waterson is gonna not walk through her, but this is her victory, and UFC wants her to be back into that title shot picture. I'm sure. I don't disagree strongly. I'm going to go Waterson here. I'm a big fan of Waterson. And, I also disagree with the sentiment that, she pot shots. I don't know if, I would describe her as a pot shotter. I see Tecia Torres, Michelle Waterson, you describe them as both strikers, but distinctly different strikers. You were correct. She's called the tiny tornado. You're correct when she kind of has those blitzes. She's definitely the forward fighter, and that has served her very well to a 9-1 record. Waterson is a counter striker. In many ways, she's kind of like the female division's answer to a Stephen Thompson type fighter. She's a superb counter striker. She waits for people to overcommit. In many ways, Tecia Torres is the kind of fighter that a Waterson striker should be able to capitalize on. It's a matter of who can sort of impose their will. And I could see Waterson, if she can land those side kicks, keep the distance, she should be able to do just enough on the feet to get Tecia to maybe overcommit, maybe get a little bit more reckless and get a little bit closer. And then, with Michelle Waterson, she has 100% takedown accuracy. And if she tries to take you down, you're going down. And she does a good job of, this is not your wrestling takedown. She's not shooting singles, doubles, hip tosses. You overcommit, you get into her. She uses your momentum against you to take you down. And then from the top, if she can do some ground and pound. She also has a great jiu-jitsu game. She has quite a few submission victories under her belt. So I see her as slightly more well-rounded. I think that you're absolutely correct when you give Tecia the power advantage, and the power and the output advantage, and that is smart money. Usually if one person has both the output advantage and the power advantage, you don't want to bet against that person. Waterson's just not your typical fighter. She's very good at fighting fighters like that and being able to maintain that distance, be a counter striker, look for opportunities, take it down, maybe capitalize. This is really close. And I think you guys are a little bit ahead of the curve when you're going Torres here. I think that calling Watterson the favorite here seems disingenuous to me. I think like she's who the UFC wants to win. This is not an easy fight for her. Does everyone in the female, like in the 115 division, have a victory over Beck Rawlings? It's kind of like what it used to be in the heavyweight for like Frank Mir.
Yeah. Right. If you beat Beck, you can stay in the UFC.
This next fight, hardcore fight fans, they've circled this on their calendar. Like this is a fight. Like this is a fight we want to watch. Fight fans want to watch Eddie Alvarez versus Justin Gaethje. I think casual fans may not even know who Justin Gaethje is. May not know who Eddie Alvarez is, to be frank. They are promising violence, guys. I, for one, am pretty excited. We're going to start with the former champ, Eddie Alvarez, real quick. He said that when he signed with the UFC, he got in, his first fight was against Donald Cerrone, who destroyed him. And he said after that fight, he started really game planning for opponents. And he said that because he was like, he just wasn't prepared for all the things that Cerrone would bring to him. And he was like, dang, I was just kind of trusting myself in there and I got destroyed. So now I'm really going to focus on game planning for each opponent and be a lot more methodical, a lot more thoughtful. And he says for this fight, he's kind of going back to his roots. He's saying that maybe he overthought things in the ring and it made him just a touch slower when it comes to pulling the trigger. He wants to be a more instinctive fighter, and he is promising the pain this Saturday to bring the violence. So do you think this is true, or is this just a ploy? Do you think Eddie Alvarez is being honest when he says he wants this all out brawl type style to kind of fight Gaethje with his style of fighting? I'm gonna throw it to David first.
I definitely hope so. He did say that this is there is a title on the line in this fight. It's the title of the most violent fighter in the UFC. And as a fan, that makes me very, very happy. Also, I mean, even if Eddie Alvarez was not, planning on going back to his roots and just like, going in there to fight, Justin Gaethje tends to bring that out of his opponents, no matter what their plan was going in, just because of his style of fighting. I'm honestly not sure if that's the smart way for Alvarez to approach this fight, though. He tends to get dropped or hit and dropped a lot.
A lot.
Dustin Poirier laid a beating on him in that first round. In his last fight, that was ended up being a no contest, but that first round was pretty viciously one-sided against Alvarez.
Matt may have a thing or two to say about that. I said Matt may have a thing or two to say about that Eddie Alvarez Dustin Poirier fight. But go ahead, Dave.
But Conor dropped him like 3 times in 3 minutes. He's very, very hittable, and against someone like Gaethje, that's not good, because Gaethje, arguably throws harder than Dustin Poirier. I mean, it's hard to say something like that, but you can definitely make that argument.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a very good argument. I think you can just flat out say it. That's just fact, man. You talk about the former champ real quick. Let's bring up some of his positives. Good footwork. He's an accurate striker, and he's not the biggest guy. And so he does a good job. He sets up a lot of his strikes with that crouch to counter, hits you with something, darts to the outside, uses his cross as a cover. He's generally moving forward. Like that's kind of like his style. He can kind of mix things up too. Like if he kind of like throws something and you're right there and he can't quite reach you, he might throw like a leg kick or like a body kick or something like that. So there is a bit of versatility to Eddie Alvarez's game, and on top of that, he is a decent wrestler too. So and very good at winning scramble exchanges. So he's going against a guy that like just seems to be like really freaking good at those things, right? Like seems to really operate extremely well in the chaos in Justin Gaethje. But and for a while, Alvarez his chin was kind of legendary. Like you said, he just gets dropped and then he gets back up and he's still functioning and is able to it seems like fight through concussions sometimes. Could not do it against Conor, but go ahead.
So speaking of, getting dropped, getting back up and just like toughing through things and, possibly fighting through concussions. That is true. That's one of the reasons a lot of people like Eddie Alvarez. That's why I like Eddie Alvarez. I mean, he's just a tough mofo when he gets in there and just fights. But Justin Gaethje is that. I'm not gonna say on steroids, but you know what I mean. Like he's like
on metaphorical steroids. Don't send USADA after Gaethje. He didn't do anything to you.
But both guys have like their toughness maxed out, but Gaethje just has like the ultimate cap on his toughness. It's just it's hard to out tough Justin Gaethje, and that's usually what Alvarez does in his fights, which makes it difficult here.
I think Gaethje is also a little more unpredictable as a striker. So even if Eddie does come in with like a somewhat more sound defensive game plan, I don't think it's going to work all that well. And like David said, I think Gaethje brings out the brawl in other guys. And I think at this point, it's hard to tell where Gaethje's chin is, but Eddie's is definitely on the downhill.
Yeah.
I think they're both still, hanging in there though. But I lean towards Gaethje, or however you pronounce it. It's okay, because in a couple years he won't be able to pronounce it himself. CTE is not funny.
Yeah, it really isn't, man.
Is this valid? Gaethje right that?
Yeah. Just mentioning USADA earlier, we didn't even bring up like John Jones yet in this episode. I just want to throw out like how ridiculous it is when your defense is tainted cocaine. I mean,
bitch, set me up.
Nah, dude, I didn't cheat. The illegal drugs that I took and the steroids in them or whatever.
That's some awesome cocaine. You get high and you get roided up. Damn. I mean
better than gas station dick pills, I'll tell you that much.
He is making improvements in his life.
We talk about Gaethje. I think one of the reasons why he's such a fan favorite is that, there is a bit of trash talking in this game, and he has that Conor thing where he's backing it up, and he's not really saying ridiculous things. He basically just says, "Hey, this is the kind of fighter I am, and honestly, I don't think that you can handle it." And then he goes out there, and he's done it 18 times. And I think the fans like him because he's one of those guys that proved himself for a while. Before he got a shot at the UFC. And then once he's gotten into the UFC, in terms of a jump in competition at the time, fighting Michael Johnson was, at least rankings-wise, a big jump in competition. And for him to go in there and put on that kind of show, it really opened my eyes. I was like, man, this guy was good, but he was in the WSFO, OF. And it was like, I mean, those guys aren't nearly the talent level as guys that are in the UFC. I guess what we're seeing now is like a lot of those smaller promotions. It's a bit of a minor league. Some of these guys are talented. They're young. The Division I wrestler, and the crazy thing is, he really doesn't rely on. It's almost more like a decoy. Like it's there. You talk about a guy that throws in volume. It's a ridiculous 10 plus punches landed a minute. And a fairly accurate guy. On the flip side, he absorbs 9 punches a minute or something like that. So it's you talk about guys that take one, that throw one. Gaethje is that guy, and because of that, and I know Matt, you were joking and not so joking. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I don't know how long Justin Gaethje can last doing this sport with his style. I think he would have to change it up dramatically. And it's not that he can't. So let's kind of get into the fight a little bit. And you were absolutely right, Matt, when you talked about his striking and it being very high level. And that's the thing about it. He is a technical, like a technically good striker, which is very surprising with his wrestling background. He turned himself into that, he does his best work when he's attacking, when he's moving forward. And you see early on his opponents are like, they get hit with something like, ooh, and they really start respecting it, you know? And it's like hands up here, or like you still have to be mindful of like a potential takedown. Though, I mean, like he hasn't even like attempted a takedown, I think, in the UFC. He kind of has these power combinations, right? Right hook to cross. And to me, it's a lot like the former champ Cody Garbrandt with that power combo where he swings and swings. And usually, you know, you get those wide shots when you throw a hook or something like that. When you throw hooks, it's a weird thing, but you just kind of instinctively block the last thing that hit you, even though it doesn't quite make sense, because the next thing's not going to come from the same place. But if a guy hits you like on the side of your face with a hook, you're going to cover up on the sides of your head, then boom, you can get hit straight down the middle. And that's what Cody's really good at, hook, and then like to set up a straight down the middle. Whereas Gaethje, he likes to finish it up with like an uppercut, which is a little odd because usually uppercut is a setup. It's not really like a power punch. You use it, you throw it, and then it sets up something else. But man, a lot of flame when this guy strikes. He kind of like gets into like this bull in a china shop kind of thing. He just kind of like bums forward, and I see a lot of early Eddie Alvarez, and I guess now Eddie Alvarez, in Gaethje's game. It's slightly more finessed. He's a little bit bigger. In many ways, a lot of the blueprint for what Eddie Alvarez was able to do. Gaethje's kind of like that Alvarez 2.0, and I think, as Matt pointed out, you know, if this matchup is what happens is what we kind of think of in our heads is going to live up to our expectations. It's going to be a lot of violence, a lot of punches landed. Then it's kind of like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. You have like your health combo at your health meter at the top, and like Justin Gaethje has like this full meter. Eddie Alvarez kind of goes into the fight with like maybe 75%, 65% of that meter, or like left or something like that. I just don't know of all the guys. You know, like this is a guy that gets dropped a lot, going against a guy that like drops people like crazy. It just seems like a very a tough matchup for Eddie Alvarez. So I see this for Gaethje. This is my other thing, and just to throw it out there, I don't know. Like this is my kind of more cautious or pessimistic side, I might say. I don't know if this will be like this like super violent fight. I wonder if Eddie Alvarez is gonna kind of wisen up and go, you know what, I don't know if I can swing with Gaethje and win and maybe use his wrestling, kind of like dirty it up. What do you think about that? Do you think that would be the smart way for him to go? Let's talk about his blueprint to rule the octagon, Matt. What does Alvarez have to do to beat Gaethje?
Eddie is going to have to be very defensively sound and accurate with his strikes while moving backwards, and then also use his wrestling to grind and control, possibly off of the cage too. Probably just gonna need to get him like straight takedowns, maybe not like a clinch or grinding against the cage. He's gonna have to straight up take him down, which I think he might have trouble with. So I got Gaethje by Mortal Kombat bicycle kick, step, whatever, dragon kick.
Liu Kang. I have the new Mortal Kombat game, by the way. That game is so fun. I was sold when I watched Beast Mode play it. All right, so it seems like we're all in agreement. Gaethje? Gaethje.
Yes, sir.
Gaethje. All right, let's move on to this next fight. This next fight, a huge fight for the division. It seems like unofficially, this is the title eliminator, or the contender eliminator. The next person would potentially get the next shot at the champion, though we don't know where the champion's going. There is a lot of push, I'm sure, by the UFC, obviously by TJ Dillashaw. We haven't quite heard Mighty Mouse say anything like positively about it, but it sounds like a super fight is kind of bubbling between Mighty Mouse and TJ Dillashaw. But the winner of this fight's probably going to get that shot. What do you think, Dave?
I would tend to agree with you. We were talking earlier that, the divisions basically have Mighty Mouse, Joseph Benavidez, and then this next group of guys Benavidez snuck by Cejudo when those two guys fought. But it's hard to make an argument for Benavidez versus Mighty Mouse 7, as you said. So yeah, basically Cejudo or Pettis, whoever comes out on top in this one, probably gets the next title shot against Mighty Mouse, assuming he doesn't go for the super fight.
So
I concur.
Let's just get into the fight. I think we've seen huge improvements from Cejudo, like huge improvements from Cejudo since his first fight with Demetrius. Now, there was not a lot that you could take from that fight with Mighty Mouse. He got destroyed like really quickly. And at his game, like Mighty Mouse took him down, right? Like it just shows you how ridiculous Mighty Mouse is. He's like, oh, like Olympic gold medalist, whatever.
I'll beat you at your own thing.
I'll beat you at your own thing. As another person that has frequented the BBYK, Brian would say, the John Jonesification of the sport. So, yeah, but I mean, he did it. It was impressive. And then he went on. Man, you talk about like a welcome to the UFC, son. You have to go from Mighty Mouse and then Benavidez. That's not too many people that go into the UFC and it's like, all right, you're 1 and 2, the champ, and then like the next best guy. That was tough. And I'm with you, David. I like that you categorized that fight as a close fight. I think a lot of people saw it as an impressive victory for Benavidez, which it was because Cejudo was a good opponent. But I saw it as a close fight too.
Cejudo won that fight.
Yeah,
I don't care what you guys say. Cejudo won that fight.
I think you can make that argument, Matt. I definitely think you can make that argument, and that's my point. I think the narrative afterwards was definitely like Benavidez looked impressive, and it's like he looked impressive in that like he won a close decision against a very high caliber guy. Not that Cejudo looked bad, and then he went on against Wilson Race, who you know, you talk about the quality of competition. There's just not too many elite level mixed martial artists that are that size. But Wilson is still one of the top guys in that division. And what Cejudo showed in that fight just wrecked him. Very impressive. Yeah. Very impressive. Shades of Frankie Edgar with his striking. And I'm not, like, I know that sounds hyperbolic, but that's how good he improved in his boxing. I thought it was like, it went from a thing where I was like, all right, passable striking, which is frankly all you need if you're like Olympic gold medalist, like wrestler, his grappling, all that stuff, so elite level, and you're just kind of like, well, if you could just Johnny Hendricks it, like, you know, have a good right hand or something like it, like you don't need too many tools. And Cejudo showed in the last fight, hey, you know what, I might be one of the better boxers too. So I just thought it was like a very impressive win. On the flip side, Sergio Pettis, you know, the guy does keep winning, and he wins with his style. I haven't seen a lot of evolution in his game. And I don't know if that's just like a Pettis Bros thing, because I think his brother is like the big like we got to a certain level doing a thing, and then we lost at it, and we were like, well, but we're just going to stick with our thing. And, you know, Sergio's much younger, obviously tons of room for improvement. Let's just start getting into this fight, breaking it down. Dave, I'm going to start with you, man.
All right. So I'll start with Sergio Pettis. He is a very good striker. He's not quite the same, you know, exotic, flashy level of a striker that his older brother is. But he is a very good striker. He has great footwork. And as he's gotten older and kind of like grown into his body, he's added some power to his game. His fight against John Moraga, like he had a great counter. I think it was a counter right in that one that just like, you know, it was like, oh, he has some power in his hands now. That I was not expecting that. So he's really kind of growing into that power aspect of his game. That being said, he still tends to have some defensive lapses at times. His footwork is really good. His movement's really good. But he tends to kind of forget some of that when he goes in attack mode. I mean, granted, most fighters, you know, aren't as defensive when they're throwing, but it seems to be more so with someone like Pettis. And over on the flip side, like you were saying with Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medal wrestler. But his bread and butter in the UFC now is his boxing. Like, the guy has become a really, really technical, good striker. I think this fight plays out on the feet for the most part, just because Cejudo seems to enjoy that now. But if Cejudo wants this to go to the ground, I think he'll be able to get it there. Pettis stuffs 2/3 of takedowns attempted on him, but Henry Cejudo is a different level when it comes to taking.
All right, yeah, David, but asterisk though, can we just go over, and not to, like, these are professional athletes, not to shit on any of these guys, but I mean, Brandon Moreno, Chris Carasso, Chris Clay, I mean, none of these guys they come close to being able to mix it up and put on the pressure, and that's if you take away Cejudo's like newfound striking, which, by the way, I cannot tell you how impressed I am, which it may be one of the single biggest jumps in like a skill set for any fighter that I've seen within the last year, just turning something that was just like adequate into an emphasis and something like a strength. So impressive by Cejudo. And Pettis just hasn't really fought. He's been able to kind of control the guys that he's fought against. He's not going to be able to do that against Cejudo. I also disagree that this is going to, I mean, it might stay on the feet. Pettis is very long for the division, and I think if he could use his quickness, he might be able to have some success just kind of like not necessarily hurting Cejudo, but frustrating him and then staying out of the way. I don't think it will take too long before Cejudo starts mixing up his boxing to shoot for takedowns, take this to the ground, and really grind on Pettis, hurt him, make him pay for it. Just wear on him, put his weight on him. Once it gets to the mat or against the cage or anything like that, I just think we're going to see a pretty big difference in skill level. Cejudo's just that good. And Pettis has, no joke, like good jiu-jitsu too. So I guess, like Cejudo has to be mindful of submission attempts, but I just see him being able to put on a clinic, especially if he puts Pettis on his back. Matt, I'm going to let you talk about this for a bit. What are you seeing here, man?
I think we're going to see another step in the evolution of Cejudo. He's always got something different. Like, even just the gap between his title fight and the Benavidez fight, like, his Muay Thai looked so much better just in that short few months between that. And then between that fight and his last fight, his boxing looked so much better. I think he's going to probably come out on the feet, and I think that's Pettis' best chance is, from range. But I think he's going to mix it up there, and basically when he wants the fight to end, he's going to take him down and submit him.
Oh, you think Cejudo's going to submit him?
I think Cejudo could submit him.
The first submission of his career. You're calling it. That's.
I thought he got a submission on his last fight. Oh no, it was a
liver
shot.
TKO.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever submitted someone. He's knocked people out, but I don't think he's ever submitted anyone. Oh.
That would be real egg in the face to Pettis if he was able to pull off a submission. That would be impressive.
His top wrestling is just so good, and
it'll be light years. But I have a hard time. You do not want Cejudo on top. That would be. Yeah. And he seems like a very. Remember early on in his career, it was kind of like, can he even make 125? I think Pettis may be taller, but you just look at his frame. Like his brother, they have this very lean, svelte build, long. I mean, good for MMA. But Cejudo's just like stocky, like he's like a tank. I would just imagine if this went to the ground, I just really see the Cejudo. So it seems like, once again, 3. Are we 3? Cejudo.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. All right, you guys are about to get shocked because Alistair Overeem. No, but Alistair Overeem versus Francis Ngannou. This is a fun fight.
Overeem is gonna dream.
I that's definitely a possibility. You know what? Why don't we let you start? Why don't you give the overview, what you see, the strengths of these fighters, and how you see this fight playing out, Matt?
Overeem is obviously extremely technical on his feet, and is also really good at running away, but then countering people while they chase him. And he's got a sick guillotine too. But he has no more horse meat to eat to get all those mad gains, and his chin has taken quite a beating over his whole career, so he's very susceptible to getting knocked out. And on the other hand, Francis Ngannou is massive and has insane power, and I think he's a lot more technical than people give him credit for. He's got good body positioning in the clinch. Haven't really seen him on the ground, but he's pretty accurate in terms of striking. He's not like super high volume, but as well as being powerful, he is defensively responsible and is fairly accurate. But I just think there's an advantage there in that Overeem's chin is basically gone, because even though he won't have the technical advantage and he might get hit a lot, he really needs to only land one good one against Overeem to win it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that if you had a bathroom break for like the judges, I think this is a good fight to have a bathroom break. This is going to be pretty easy. Someone's getting finished. I mean, just to put this into perspective, with the 60-plus fights that these guys have had combined, 5 of them have gone to decision. Someone's getting finished in this fight. David, I'm gonna throw it to you, man. How do you see this thing? How do you see this thing shaping out?
So, I feel like Francis Ngannou is still somewhat of a mystery. He's had 5 fights in the UFC, but none of them have left the second round. And his last 3 fights, he finished in the first round. And in those 3 fights, so against Andrei Arlovsky, Ngannou landed 8 strikes. Anthony Hamilton, Ngannou landed 1 strike. Against Bojan, and I know you said I was good with names, but not this one.
Come on.
Whatever.
Come on, David.
Francis Ngannou landed 8 strikes. Like, he finishes people so quickly, you almost don't really know what he is, except for super strong and super quick. It's he's still the last time he went past the first round was against Curtis Blades, who's also made significant strides since that. But I agree with Matt. It's Overeem is obviously much more experienced, very good technical striker, and he's gotten into a different groove now since his horse meat days. He's much more patient, I guess, if you will. But we all know the problem with his chin, and if anyone's going to wreck someone's chin, it's going to be someone like Ngannou. So I feel like the probably the fun pick and the smart pick is Ngannou here. But I mean, this is a big step up. Granted, Arlovsky was a big step up for Ngannou, and then Ngannou just blitzed him. But who knows if Ngannou can't get that first blitz? How does he adapt? How does I feel like there's still a lot of question marks around his game. But man, he is big, strong, and very quick, and very strong, and very powerful, and all that stuff.
I agree with your assessment, David, and you, Matt, as well. And when I talked to you guys early about this, my one thing about Francis Ngannou, and I'm a huge fan of his. I remember when we first saw him, when his first fight, it was like that debut fight he fought with Blades, and it was kind of like, what the crap? That's a real person? Yeah. He's huge, he's jacked, and usually guys that are built like that, you have some kind of like muscular fatigue. Like guys like that can't really last long, and yet for some reason this guy can throw flame whenever. Granted, his fights don't last too long, so we haven't really seen that push, but it doesn't look like that's been a problem so far. He's a phenomenal athlete. My question is, and I think this is just in terms of like kind of fighting that narrative. I think, this is another guy. Obviously, the UFC is pushing him. He was along with Waterson and Paige Van Zandt and Source Northcutt. He was one of those guys that like got to rock the new Reebok gear. He was one of the UFC models. This is one of the faces of the brand, and very surprising. They didn't go after like Stipe, the champ. I know that they were still working out some contract negotiation stuff at the time. I do believe that stuff has been resolved. So we will be seeing the champ fight in the near future against the winner of this fight. He hasn't really fought like high-level competition. You're absolutely right. Arlovsky was like the biggest name, and to be fair, he's looked impressive against everyone he's fought so far. But there's a lot of that Sergio Pettis thing where it could be, man, the first time he goes against an elite level guy, he really shows his stuff. It can also be it's the first time that he may start looking slightly outclassed. That we could see that, this is a guy that kind of uses tools. I wanted to say that just because I think that maybe that there's something to be said about like maybe not jumping a gun with just anointing this guy as the next big thing. Having said that, I mean, we saw like the sports science thing or whatever it is. This is the hardest puncher in the UFC. It does not surprise me that that's the fact of the matter. Though I don't quite know how they like figured that out. Like, did they test everyone? I mean, has everyone like done this test to know? I don't know. I know that there was a heavyweight boxer recently that also did something, and he was like supposed to be like the strongest puncher in combat sports. So I don't know how accurate these things are. Obviously, Ngannou has shown incredible, like, just knockout power. One of those crazy, like, Anthony Johnson level, you just don't want to get touched by this guy. My thing about Ngannou that I find so impressive is that despite being a freak athlete, super long, I mean, we're talking about a guy that has, like, Brock Lesnar dimensions at 2% body fat, faster than Brock Lesnar, and just worlds better when it comes to his striking. And his wrestling, obviously, has been the thing that he's been trying to work on the most. He said early on in his career he knew guys would try to take him down. That was his weakness. He's really worked on that. People haven't really been able to take him to the ground. And, I mean, if he tries to take down Alistair Overeem, color me surprised. I don't see that happening. I could see Overeem becoming a desperate wrestler, just trying to grapple with him and not really stay in a range where he can load up on his shots. I just really like the fact that Ngannou, despite being a guy with like crazy power, crazy athleticism, it doesn't seem like he doesn't fight like a guy that like needs that to win. He fights like a smart guy, a smart fighter. Stays with himself. You talk about like this low output. Like part of that is once he touches you, you kind of die. But the other thing is, he's not just throwing wildly. I think we have in our heads that Ngannou's like this beast, and he goes up and he wrecks people, kind of like a pre-USADA Vitor Belfort that would just kind of like blitz you or something with his knockout power. That's not the case. This is a very like high IQ fighter, very patient fighter, and he's willing to wait for his shots. He's a really good counter striker. So Alistair Overeem is thinking, hey man, I can like hang back, let this guy kind of like come at me and like just use my technique, my years of experience, and just kind of overwhelm him with elite level striking, something that he's not used to. I think he's gonna be a little surprised. I think he's gonna find a guy that's not willing to just kind of go in there and let him play his game. I think I saw Robin Black. He said something about Alistair Overeem. I think he's picking Overeem to win this fight because of experience or whatever. But he said something like, Alistair Overeem, he took a dump the other day that had more fight experience than like a lot of guys in the UFC. I thought, I was like, okay, that's whatever, Robin. But it is true. This is a guy that has fought for a while.
He also picked Conor to beat Mayweather.
Yeah, what idiot would pick Conor to beat Mayweather? I mean, like, if you pick Conor to beat Mayweather, like, just shut up. Like, don't even do a podcast anymore. Like, what's the point of even living after that? Overeem, it seems like he, over the years, is an increasingly susceptible chin. This guy obviously doesn't, his horse meat supplier has gone AWOL. Not to take anything away from him, he's a number one guy in the division, number one contender. And I heard this thing, and it's more of a if Overeem starts going on the downside of his career, which I think he's on, and even if he gets like knocked out here, I just feel like this is a guy that's kind of gotten embarrassed a few times on the big stage. And I could see that happening to him again. And so for all the people that like kind of like will make fun of Overeem, especially if he gets like destroyed by Ngannou, which is, there's a chance that that's going to happen. There's a chance he goes in first round and just over dreams, right? This is a guy that's beaten 6 former heavyweight champions 9 times in his career. When Alistair Overeem decides to call it quits, and I don't know when he's going to call it quits, this is it's a Hall of Fame career we're talking about, one of the best to have ever done it. Obviously, I think a lot of fight fans will maybe put an asterisk in that entire era where he was just on every steroid imaginable. But this is a very skilled fighter, and I think if you are a UFC fan that's kind of bought that's drinking the Francis Ngannou Kool-Aid, I would say, hey, man, it's a heavyweight fight, first of all, so anything can happen. One shot, these guys both, like, Ngannou has crazy knockout power, does not negate the fact that Overeem himself has incredible knockout power. And in UFC, I mean, MMA is just a weird sport. Anything really can happen, and if Ngannou at some point kind of strays away from his conservative game plan, or Overeem's really able to, like, work him over from distance with kicks, to the body, to the leg, really make Ngannou like have to switch things up. Anything can happen. Another thing I'll throw in Ngannou's favor, this is a guy, right-handed fighter. We've seen him fight southpaw now a few times. He's one of those guys that's like a TJ Dillashaw kind of guy that, you know, obviously favors one way, but is comfortable if within the just the way the fight moves him, is comfortable striking off of either stance, which just makes it even more incredibly dangerous and scary and all of that stuff. And, you know, he's got that up jab to shovel hook. All of his stuff is calculated to really land his power shots. You know, not like Justin Gaethje. This is a guy that is willing to go quick to throw something power. And unlike Justin Gaethje, as soon as he throws, it's just one of those things where he knows where his strengths are. And I'm with the UFC on this one in that, and we're about to get to the main event where it's really true. But for Ngannou, him winning is awesome for the UFC. Him against Stipe will be a fun fight. Alistair winning is another one of those like old guard. Stipe versus Alistair, I guess, yeah, that would make sense. If he beats Ngannou, he deserves the title shot. But I don't see him. I don't. There's nothing really too compelling there for me. So from just like a competitive, like good for the sport angle, I'm going Ngannou. My head, I'm seeing Ngannou winning this one, and in my heart, I'm rooting for him too. So, you know, everything, I'm going for Ngannou on this one. Look, guys, I feel like we've been in agreement this entire thing, and I know, like, for this last one, it's not going to be the same because I already know we've talked earlier, David. I'm not going to let you contradict yourself. I'm going to make you stick with what you said off the air, and no one can confirm it. But you think, Jose Aldo easily wins this one. Like, you're calling a knockout, like blowout, and I'm going to make you stick to that. So I'm going to talk with Matt because, like, we're kind of Team Max Holloway over here. But Matt, I mean David, I'm going to let you defend Jose Aldo.
All right, sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But we're
double flying knee right off at the bell.
All right, so let's just get into. I think we kind of agree with the UFC. It's like, yep, you pick these fighters and you kind of stack them in their favor. And look, this is not the UFC's fault. I don't know if I wouldn't go Edgar Holloway. I don't know if I'd say easily Holloway. I think there's a little bit more nuance to that fight. That was a fight I really was looking forward to. And what the hell, man? Like, with Edgar and his career and, like, what does it take? Because
so many what-ifs in Frankie Edgar's career.
Right? Like, just a ton. And you got to believe that, like, Saturday night, Frankie Edgar has to be the biggest Max Holloway fan. Because if Jose Aldo wins, he would just be
He's screwed.
Why, guys?
Retire.
What is the point? Yeah, maybe. I mean, this guy suffers more damage in this camp than he's ever taken in the cage. Like, minus that one round against the bully. What's his name? I'm forgetting that guy. But
Greg Maynard?
Greg Maynard. You're right.
Oh, Maynard.
And
yeah,
you're totally right. And oh man, I remember watching that. You talk about like a 10-7 round. It just he got like knocked out like 3 or 4 times or something, and he just Frankie Edgar just kind of kept rolling around, and they never called it. Comes back and like dominates the next 4 rounds. Is the most impressive thing I've ever. Well, not the most, but like one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in the UFC. Made me a huge fan of Frankie Edgar. I really wanted to see that fight. That's not what the MMA gods gave us. Instead, we got the rematch nobody asked for. And Max Holloway, Jose Aldo. Matt, I'm going to let you take first stab at this one. How do you see this one going? We can keep this one short, guys. Like, I think we're all in agreement on this one, except for David.
I think Max finishes him similarly. There's not going to be the same testing out period. He knows exactly what he's going to get. There's that kind of moment towards the end of the second round when he was taunting him.
Yeah.
Where Max was taunting him, where you knew he was like, "You have nothing that can stop me."
Yep.
And I think he already knows that going in. There was a moment at the end of the first round where Max got rocked a little bit by a flying knee, but Max recovered pretty well. So if Jose Aldo wants to win, he better get back on the juice and get a double flying knee off the bell. Otherwise, he's going to get knocked out again.
Also a question, but why does the UFC have Aldo in his champ shorts? I'm kind of confused by that one. Now,
Because he's still the champ. I didn't really lose that.
Still the champ. He never lost the
Thank
belt.
you. That's right.
Yeah. So, all right, David, the contrarian, big Jose Aldo fan. If you guys listen to our podcast, you know this guy is a huge Aldo fan. Loves Aldo. Loves the beautiful people of Brazil. Hates Kobe Covington, and
Everyone hates
and he thinks Aldo is gonna shock the world here. David, go ahead.
So my pick is Aldo by TKO leg kicks.
TKO leg kicks. It's got
Actually,
like that Faber fight.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I recently rewatched the Holloway Aldo one, and something I maybe noticed the first time I watched it, but forgot, I guess. Aldo really didn't throw any leg kicks in that fight against Holloway.
Nope.
Which it's interesting for an Aldo fight. But in all seriousness, this is a Holloway all day. He had that first round against Aldo in the first fight, just getting his timing, feeling him out. Aldo landed several times. It looked a little iffy at times for Holloway. But then once Holloway figured it out, he was like, "Yep, cruise control essentially," and just started pouring it on. I really have a hard time seeing this fight going any other way than rounds 2 and 3 the first time they fought. I mean,
we really appreciate you admitting you are so wrong about this, Dave.
But if you really want me to pick Aldo, I will. He's super cheap in DraftKings.
If you pick Aldo in DraftKings and he shocks the world, that might just win you your night.
Oh yeah.
So if you want to go with a bro for Aldo, though, that might be the first thing you tell him to do. Throw your leg kicks, finish off your combination. It seems like Jose Aldo was very gun shy at times. He had some success. Now, I totally think that the success he had was calculated success that Holloway gave him just to see, what he could do. And so he may have never actually really been in that fight. It could have just been Holloway's I just want to make sure that you don't get that lucky shot and just ice me. So let's see what you can do. All right, that's what you can do let's see what you can do round 2. Oh, really? All right, I'm going to throw some of this. Oh, you really can't do anything. All right, round 3. I'm just going to destroy you. Holloway has all that information now. He knows he owns this guy. What can Aldo learn since the last fight? He hasn't had another fight. I have a hard time seeing his camp putting together a game plan that could take down a guy as dynamic and versatile as Holloway. But I do think that the first thing he needs to do is throw in more of those leg kicks, just anything to slow Holloway down. And also, you got to think just sort of the physics of it. Throwing those leg kicks as the guy's coming in, you're often throwing a 1-2 or something strike up top. That means that Holloway, either he's going to counter, is going to be heavy on his lead leg. And I think Aldo has to kind of capitalize and win in the periphery, win on the small stuff, and be okay with maybe losing some of the bigger exchanges in the middle and make it as unorthodox and as uncomfortable as a fight for Holloway as possible, because this is a guy that just Holloway. He's like a computer. He kind of assesses the information that you give him. He looks at the way you strike and the way you shoot and the different things, and he computes it, and then he comes up with the perfect game plan to neutralize what you're doing, or not necessarily neutralize it if he thinks that it plays to his advantage. Against Lamas, many times it was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna let you have some success because I think I'm gonna win these exchanges. Like right here, get in the middle of the cage. Let's do this, because he didn't. I mean, he just believes in himself that much. Dang, guys, I think we were in agreement with basically every single fight here. It's kind of crazy. A first for a BBYK.
That is a first.
Except for Torres Watterson.
That's right. I'm going for Watterson on that one. But I do appreciate you guys being ahead of the curve and above the frankly lazy narrative that this is an easy fight for Watterson. It is not. I think that's about wraps it up for us. I want to point out the fact that David has been doing these wonderful write-ups for DraftKings on brosbros.com. I encourage you guys to go check that out. It's really good stuff. He puts his money where his mouth is. He makes money. He wants to help you guys make money too. So check that out, and I'm sure you're going to probably have one up Friday.
Exactly.
So definitely you will want to stay tuned, brosbros.com. Any closing thoughts, guys?
Nobody likes Colby Covington.
Especially Brazilians.
Brazilians. And his mom. She told me last night.
Oh, man. No, the one thought I would have is just, UFC 218 it feels like we were saying earlier, not too much hype around it. But it really is. It's a really good card, top to bottom. It feels like an old school UFC card. No like money fight kind of stuff going on. It's all just solid, champ versus contender versus contender kind of matchups. And it should be. I mean, it's just some really good matchmaking going on in this card. So it should be a fun night.
I agree with you. I think this should be. It should be a good card. If not, it could be one of those cards where we're like, all right, we already knew all that stuff was going to happen, and then all the stuff happens. But there's a lot of potential for excitement along the way, and this is the sport of mixed martial arts. Anything can happen. Alvarez could finish Gaethje. Pettis could submit Cejudo. Overeem can finish Ngannou. And Aldo might just win TKO via leg kicks. I mean, it's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. We were talking earlier too. My closing thought is the worst thing that can happen for the UFC is Jose Aldo win. It's like, what's the point? What do we do? Where do we go from here? Max Holloway's the younger fighter, exciting fighter. Though they haven't quite marketed him. I feel like he hasn't had the push. I feel like he's an easy guy to push. Seems super cool. And his fighting style is very exciting. It's not like he's going out and grinding out wins. He's pointing down at the cage and saying, "Let's go to war." So a lot to like there, guys. If you like this episode, why don't you give us a thumbs up? And for the latest and greatest in all things BBYK, why don't you hit that subscribe button? And until next time, we are the Bros.